Hello, welcome back to another RStudios video. Today we'll be going over subsetting vectors. So an index vector tells RStudios to select particular elements or subsets from vectors. So I have this big X value with a bunch of different variables in it, but we can subset that by doing X bracket 1 colon 10 in order to get the first 10 values of this big vector. So we've got 10 values here. Some of them are NAs, which is totally fine because those are values. Okay, so there are 4 different types of these index vectors. There's logical vectors, there's positive vectors, there's negative vector integers, and then there's vectors of character strings. So logical vectors, this is when we want to try to extract all data that's not NA, which is the true and false stuff. So if there's 2 ways we can do this. There's X, and we can do bracket, and then we can do is dot NA, and then parentheses X, and we can click enter, and that gives us all of our NA values, which we don't want. We want all of our number variables. So an easy way to do this is we use a question mark, because that negates logical expression, which is NA. So it'll basically tell RStudios this, we don't want NAs. So if I do the same thing where we do X bracket, but then I do exclamation mark is dot NA X, and I'm going to go ahead and just save this as a variable real quick. So we're going to save this as a variable called Y. And we can print this variable, and we get all of our numerical values that are in this X vector, which is pretty cool. So if we wanted to go further, since now we have all the variables, the numeric variables, of this vector, we can subset this further. So if we wanted to do, get all the positive numbers, we could do our Y, and then brackets, Y is greater than, there it is, 0. And we print that, and we get all of our positive number variables. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, why can't we do this with just our X, with our vector? Why do we have to do all of this and make a new variable to do that, to get our numeric values? And I'll show you. So if we tried to do this with just X, so if we did X bracket, X is greater than 0, we do enter, we still get NAs in here because we haven't canceled out the NAs with our previous step. Now the second way to do this is we could put both of these 2 steps all together. So we could do our X bracket exclamation mark is dot NA parentheses X, and then we can put this and sign, shift of 7, and X is greater than 0. Then we enter this, and we get the same value as when we did the Y is greater than 0 thing right there, which is pretty neat. Okay, so those are logical vectors right there. Now we're going to move on to positive vector integers. So RStudios is a 1-based index, which means the first element of a vector is considered the first element. Some programming softwares do the 0th element is the first element. So we can subset some of these elements by doing x bracket C parentheses 3, 5, and 7, just for an example. And this will give us the third, the fifth, and the seventh variables in this x vector. So you can see we get 3, which is the NA, 5 never NA, and 7, which is this negative number right there. So if we try to do this to the 0th element, just to show that, we don't really get much. Just do that right there, x, and we get this numeric 0. It doesn't really tell us anything. And here's something interesting. We could also do 3,000, x bracket 3,000. And it gives us NA, so they don't really tell us anything useful, but we are allowed to do this in R, which is kind of neat. So that's positive integers. Here's the negative integer vectors. And that's pretty much the opposite of positive. For positive, we put in the vector things that we wanted, like the subsets, in order to get them, like the 3, the 5, and the 7. We did this in order to get the 3 and the 5 and the 7. But negative ones, we want everything other than these. So if I did x and then bracket C parentheses and a negative like 2 and a negative 10, those negatives are going to make sure that we get every other thing, like variable, that's not the second or the 10th subset. So you can see we got all those right there, which is cool. We could also do this in a simpler way by doing x bracket negative C and then our parentheses and just put 2 and 10. And you see we get the exact same thing. We just made it a little simpler. So now we have our last type of index vector, which is the naming elements. So we can create these by doing 2 different steps. We can do we can first create a numeric vector. So I'm going to do vect. And we're doing our C function. And we're just putting in some names, random names, like this. And equaling them to some numerical values. And then enter, and we can print our variable. And we get our names and our numbers right there. So if we just wanted the names here, we could simply type names function, and we can put our variable, and we just get the names. Now the second way to do this is we can make a new vector variable, and we can just put in the numbers. Or the values, sorry. So then we can print that just to see. We just have our variables right there, or values. So then we can add names using names and vect2. And then we can do, make sure you have your parentheses here, because that will mess you up if you don't have, your quotation marks. That has happened to me a couple times. And I messed something up. Ah, yes. You're always supposed to have a C in there. So we have our names. It's a good lesson for everyone to learn. Never forget that C right there. So not a big deal. We'll just go ahead and rewrite that. Oops, almost forgot the quotes there. I'm kind of fumbling all over myself a bit. And finally, our last name. There we go. And now we can check to see if these are identical, our vect variable and our vect2 variable, by doing identical vect, not vect, vect, and vect2. And this is true. So both of those are correct, which is pretty cool. So that's pretty much all you need to know about substituting vectors. I hope you all have a wonderful day.